The last few years of the 90s were troublesome, but the appearance of prosperity due to the dot-com bubble papered over most issues. Corporate profitability had come under pressure as early as 1997, but household spending kept going, as did business investment, often without regard to sustainability. Unfortunately, there was no new normal. The boom did end unceremoniously with help from monetary policy. The 2001 recession played out as an almost exact replica of 1990. There was a slight pickup of inflation due to inventory building during the waning days of the dot-com bubble. The Fed responded by increasing rates, then cutting them once weakness began to show. The Fed accelerated its accommodative rates in 2001, and even further after the recession ended, just as 1992. The low rates pushed interest income from around 11% to 7% by 2004, and in doing so, kept a lid on household deficit spending. Meanwhile, the flight to safety kept corporate credit constrained so inventories, and thus inflation, remained low enough for the Fed to justify its historically low rate policy. But the low rates were enough to supercharge the housing market into a bubble. Enforcing low rates meant a rapid expansion of bank reserves transmitted into the repo market. This meant that the Fed was not only expanding the money supply, it was encouraging leveraged lending. For consumers, balance sheets, though deteriorating, were still healthy enough to add significant debt. From 2000 to 2003, the value of household equity holdings fell almost $6 trillion, yet household net worth only fell $800 billion. Housing prices had begun to rise enough to offset much of the dot-com bust. So much so that households added a staggering $2.5 trillion in debt during the jobless recovery. While it appeared that better times lay ahead, households were fooled into taking on massive risk simply because it was so massively mispriced.
But those who argue that housing prices are now at the point of a bubble seem to me to be missing a very important point. Unlike previous examples we have had, where substantial excessive inflation of prices later caused some problems, we are talking here about an entity, home ownership, homes, where there is not the degree of leverage that we have seen elsewhere. This is not the dot-com situation.
The housing bubble period from 2003 to 2007 saw a $20 trillion increase in household net worth, but all that was based on unstable price action. It was more than enough to rationalize a massive $7 trillion increase in household debt, and even a negative savings rate. Of course, when the housing bubble burst and the stock market tanked, the net worth evaporated, but the debt has remained. Unfortunately, the ability to spend into that negative savings rate disappeared with that net worth.
Well, the Senate today voted to toughen standards for home loans. Under these new standards, lenders would have to verify that borrowers can repay the loan. You can no longer borrow money if you can't pay it back. Let's just hope China doesn't adopt this rule or we're screwed, okay? We are so screwed. Oh, my God!
Credit had expanded so rapidly that there was more than enough for corporations to invest in inventories and ownership changes. As a result, both consumer inflation and asset inflation rapidly coexisted, a final twist of economic distortions. By 2008, the convergence of distortions and Fed policies conspired to create a trap of systemic proportions.
Well, I guess I don't buy your premise. It's a pretty unlikely possibility. We've never had a decline in house prices on a nationwide basis. So what I think is more likely is that house prices will slow, maybe stabilize, might slow consumption spending a bit. I don't think it's going to drive the economy too far from its full employment path.
All the economic activity tied into the bubbles was made possible only through the trends in household spending and the credit availability for inventory and asset financing. Despite wide proclamations of confidence.
Okay, Peter
Ian writes, should I be worried about Bear Stearns in terms of liquidity and get my money out of there? No, no, no. Bear Stearns is fine. Do not take your money out. This is real. If there's one...
Without another bubble, there is no way to recreate even the jobless recoveries of 1992 and 2002 and 2003. The Great Recession is a result of structural issues that stretch back 45 years and will not simply pass like the cyclical recessions of old.
Hi, I'm Buck, your personal tour guide to the Federal Reserve. I'm here to introduce you to one of the most complex but effective institutions in the United States. But don't worry, I'll explain it all in plain English.
We have been extremely critical of the Federal Reserve precisely because monetary policy has been misaligned for more than 4 decades. The massive structural imbalances that have characterized the bubbles and busts can be directly traced to the hubristic mistakes crafted by successful policymakers.
The growth figure has been achieved with hardly a single new job being created in the private sector. Indeed, reports suggest the White House may have exaggerated the number of jobs created or saved by the stimulus package by up to 10 times.
Time constraints forced us to omit the GSE takeover of mortgages after the savings and loan collapse, the role of foreign repo market penetration that helped drive mortgage securitizations, and the Fed's own single variant output gap miscalculations. But all these factors played a part in the distortions we did present and were a direct result of misaligned monetary policy. The Fed has been acting as if it's been the most successful enterprise in the history of humanity, yet the economic wreckage it has created, particularly when viewed in the context of multivariable marginal factors for consumers, inflation, and business presented here, point to the very reason why the recovery many had hoped for has not materialized. The recovery that was forming in 2009 has been overburdened because the Fed refuses to acknowledge that it's been accumulating 40-plus years of errors. The major themes and analysis presented here are culled from our research reports, which are much more detailed and comprehensive. Our work is not some academic review of history, but rather our research into these economic distortions forms the backbone of our portfolio management strategies. Extensive knowledge plus detailed analysis will equal investment success. Head to our website, www.acminstitutional.com, to obtain full copies of our research reports or to see exactly how we have turned our analysis into investment success.